CJJC 26 Sweet Summer Grappling Post Show presented by Valor Minds. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz, alongside my broadcast partner, Luis Rodriguez. Where can people follow you, Luis?
You can follow me on Instagram at LuJitsu10P.
You can give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Want to give a special shout out to our sponsor of the program here today in Valor Minds. They're always a tremendous supporter of us here at the CJJC events. You could always catch them there. Tremendous products out there in the marketplace too as well. Getting into things, Luis, where can people apply if they want to get onto these future cards?
You can always hit me up on Instagram, DM me. I'll be able to give you the application for it. Otherwise, if you want to apply yourself, it's at jujitsuclub.co. Go to applications and you'll see it right away. CJJC 27 applications are actually now live, so go apply or hit me up to get you a match. We'll get going.
And the reason we're all here today, folks, is we're recapping the CJJC 26 Sweet Summer Grappling Show. Want to give a shout out to some of our sponsors for the event in its entirety. Shout out to DCO MMA, Valor Minds, Zombie Sport, X Vapes, After the Final Bell, Comments from the Peanut Gallery, as well as the MMA plug on Mile High Sports, where you can catch that each and every Wednesday on the Mile High Sports Network at 1 p.m. Moving along from that, it was a great event. Saturday shows are always a fun time, especially when we can fill up the Stampede, have people from all across the scene, all across the region filling in there, supporting their camps. It's like the banners from Game of Thrones all going into battle there. So it's cool to see all the support and the growing scene that we've had here with CJJC and just the footprint that we've been able to bring in and the athletes that we're attracting in the process.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like part of what's most exciting about setting up these shows is being able to work with consistently new people. Not that necessarily happens in an influx. Sometimes, we're very fortunate to work with the people that we always work with that are very good to us. But, to be able to get some new competitors who've never heard of the show or teams that have never heard of the show, it's kind of surprising to me, but also it's cool to see having new people on and just see how well they do and, what they think about the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great thing to mention, that we did have quite a few newcomers in the mix that they certainly made their mark in our cage, but we also had quite a few veterans who returned to the CJJC cage. Some of them, obviously, it's the duality of thrill and agony within competition, but there were some of them who they came back and they had statement performances as well. We're going to get into some of those matchups here, but real quick, we're going to talk that main event. We had this headliner between Josh Fremd taking on Riley Alona. I thought that this was a really quality performance that made Riley's stock grow immensely in the process. I mean, we all know what Josh's accolades are. Josh is obviously a veteran of the CJJC cage, but most notably a longtime veteran of the UFC in the middleweight division. Riley going out there as more so the and I don't mean to say this in a disrespectful fashion, but he was the unknown. He was the unknown commodity coming into this matchup against somebody who is a known brand, if you will.
And, he was definitely had a little bit of momentum coming off of some other, performances. And then coming into this match against a big name, he was definitely, of the two, a much smaller, much smaller in size and stature. But he looked good, man. He kind of was throwing everything but the kitchen sink at Josh. Josh, being the bigger opponent, was able to really control him for the majority of the first and most of the second round. I gotta say, my favorite part of the match was definitely Riley. Definitely doing some smack talking while he was in there. He was getting smothered. He was getting, chokes attempted on him, smash, but he was running his mouth the entire time. Yeah, man, you gotta love it. Just kind of piping up the crowd, kind of piping up the stream, but more so just maybe still trying to get into Josh's head a little bit and see if he can kind of, work some last minute magic. Overall, the match, I really liked it. I liked the matchup. I'd love to see Riley against somebody maybe just a little bit closer in his size, just to see how that match would go. And then, of course, Josh. Shout out to Josh for just always being, awesome to work with and just a hell of a competitor in general. Yeah, that was a great main event in my opinion.
Definitely, and I'm always grateful whenever we have these fighters who have gone on in the big promotions who are able to be a part of our local shows here at the CJJC Cage. That all being said, though, I mean, being completely honest and to be objective, and so I don't get called a homer or anything along those lines, this wasn't Josh's best performance. Just calling it for what it is. Yes, he did get the win, but he even said it himself in the post grappling match interview that this wasn't his best showing, and that you could expect to see better things from him in the future. Obviously, grappling isn't his primary profession, but that all being said, there were some moments where there were some vulnerabilities that were displayed that I think that he, when he reviews this, is certainly, I mean, obviously from his immediate post-action report, I think he's going to go back and look to see, man, I could definitely have done that better. And that's not to knock Riley by any means. I think that just goes to say too that some of these guys, that there is just levels of competition that they've been used to facing throughout their career, and sometimes even on somebody's bad day they can pull off a win. The old saying in combat sports is it's always better to learn off of a win, but I also feel like in this instance there's no moral victories, right? But this is, in a sense, this is a win despite being a loss for Riley.
I agree. I think just the the experience in facing a bigger competitor, let alone a big name competitor like Josh. I think just getting the pro show experience, just the overall exposure. He looked very good in the match, despite maybe not necessarily being the favorite. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to Riley working with us again, getting him another match, just to see how that plays out.
Definitely, and I mean, the kid was active from the bottom, and you mentioned his chatter. That's something that had me entertained. I was like, okay, this kid has a little bit of sauce to him in the process. You have a big mean human on top of you trying to do bad things, and you're basically just chirping at him the entire time. Like, cool, sign me up. I want to watch that guy grapple again. Moving along from that matchup, though, into the co-main event, you had Alex Apodaca taking on Katie Labali. Like, this was a matchup that there was some perceived controversy after the end by one party, and on Katie's side, she thought that there was a slap, but I feel like there was nothing that was egregious done in the process. I think that if anything, the initial aggression was shown by Katie, and Alex just matched her energy in the process, and Alex went on to pretty much, for lack of a better term, she controlled the match. She controlled the match throughout the entirety of it, and yeah, I think that her experience working off of the wall, the wrestling, and that aspect of MMA certainly paid dividends for in this matchup in the CJJC cage.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that it is kind of unfortunate that it played out that way. I think a lot of the focus was just on the controversy of, was there striking, was there not striking.
But I only feel like it was controversy from one side after, and there wasn't anybody who felt like there was anything out of line during the match. Like, I think that has to be highlighted, that during the whole proceedings of regulation as well as overtime, there was not a single person in the crowd. There was not a single person that felt that there was something that warranted any sort of foul, any sort of stoppage, or anything that was like a oh wow moment. Like, I can look back to other matches that we've had in the CJJC cage,
it's
like
a lot dirtier.
One of them, an example, like DeAnthony Muniz and Daryl Gibson. That matchup, they were slapping the shit out of each other the entire time, and both of those guys were bloodied up throughout the contest. There was nothing even remotely close to any sort of complaints or disputes, but that's just my vantage point personally. Obviously, Katie has a dispute that feels otherwise, but that's just from where I'm sitting from the broadcast table and watching and trying to be objective in the process. I didn't think that there was anything wrong done.
Yeah, I watching it cage side, it did seem just like an aggressive match. I seen some collar ties, some clubbing, if you will, but nothing out of the ordinary of what we normally see, especially in a jiu-jitsu match that's in the cage. I think more so for me, it is just unfortunate for Katie, to just, have been upset about the decision and just the way that it played out. Because overall, it was a great match. Two very, very good competitors. One much more skilled and had more accolades in the jiu-jitsu sense. But like you mentioned, Alex looked great for her first jiu-jitsu match, as she said, in the CJJC cage especially. She looked very dominant, very confident, and played a very smart game plan against, a really experienced jiu-jitsu person. So I would love to see both of them back in the cage. Maybe set up more appropriate matches for both people. Alex going against another MMA, person would be pretty cool. Yeah, like I said, the attention of the controversy is kind of annoying to me because, like I said, I thought it was an excellent match overall. So I can't stress that enough.
And conceptually, part of our goal with the CJJC cage and with the venue and format of that is kind of bridging that gap of MMA and jiu-jitsu itself specifically. So it is a little bit more of a...
It's intense. There's a reason that our organization, we allow all submissions. We allow slams on top of that. Not to say that we are or aren't, it's not a case of like, oh, we're excusing strikes. It just so happens that in the midst of competition, especially when you have MMA fighters in there, you have, huge, big jack dudes, you have really aggressive chicks, you have, a plethora of athletes. It's going to get aggressive in there. And some people, especially in the jiu-jitsu world, you're not necessarily ready for that. We're not used to that coming off the mats of other organizations. And that's fair, but also, know what you're competing in. And, yeah, I can't stress I can't stress enough how good the match was, in my opinion. I thought it was a great match back and forth. I'm not upset with the decision. I do think Alex won significantly. She was controlling the whole time. I thought Katie looked good herself, aside from the whole controversy. I thought it was awesome. So,
yeah, agreed. I didn't even realize that there was that much of a dispute until the post tirade that Katie went on about everything. Like, I didn't think that she was that upset or whatever throughout the midst of the contest as it was happening.
She was cool. Yeah, she was cool in the cage. She still shook Alex's hand and kind of, she kept her cool.
I know that there was a little bit of turbulence afterwards that Trevor had pointed out on the broadcast. But I mean, again, like in the heat of the moment, nothing that really stood out. But again, that's a whole different discussion on that side of things. I thought that the actual match itself was very entertaining and it was competitive. There were moments that Alex had some vulnerabilities that Katie could have capitalized on, that maybe it was because she was in her head over this potential or this alleged palm strike that she didn't capitalize when the back take was there. Who knows? I can't speak for the competitors that were in there in the moment at that time. All I can speak to is what we actually saw in the cage. And the controversy shouldn't draw away from just how good Alex looked, though, in the process. And again, as this is something that is meant to serve as a bridge of the gap of jiu-jitsu and MMA, if you will, she is preparing for another pro fight here in roughly about a month's time for peak. So I think that this was, especially all that being said, like this is just a grappling session that she's used to doing on a regular basis at a high-level camp over there at high altitude. She's training with top-tier grappling specialist women on top of women who also fight, who are of the cream of the crop. So that's just outside perspective looking at it. But if we're going to move along, it's time now. What do you say we dole out some accolades here and give some recognition?
Yeah, for sure. I think if we're referring to subs, in particular sub of the night, sub of the afternoon, undoubtedly, in my opinion, it has to go to Seth Tumbleson. The kid looked like an absolute stud. Came off of grappling games, had a good showing. Unfortunately lost to, I think he lost to Bendy, right, in the
finals.
Yeah, in the finals. Who ended up also competing on the card, did very well. But yeah, came back with a vengeance, and he faced a very tough competitor in Cameron Santos. Santos coming out of Catalyst Jiu-Jitsu, who are all studs. Trevor and Taylor are running a phenomenal school over there. So everybody that competes out of there, they come game. Seth was in a little bit of trouble early on. He got his back taken, I think twice, just in a very, very slick way by Cameron, and Cameron was on him very nice and tight. And then somehow Seth managed to, kind of dictate the way the scramble went, caught a guillotine, and, put Cameron to sleep. And it was pretty gnarly. Didn't even realize it happened until Paul had already separated the two. The crowd went nuts. I went nuts. All respect to Cameron for coming in there and competing. But, yeah, Seth looked great. It was a great finish. Handled it like a champ.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to Seth's wrestling. Because like you mentioned, he was in trouble in a couple of those scrambles and sequences. He did have his back taken, but I believe not looking at the sequence itself, but he hits a switch and is able to get back toward working back toward a front headlock type position. Immediately shoots the neck, and it was like what Trevor said. It was go to sleep deep. That's immediately where he got and just had the perfect angle for that guillotine, and it was. Really, there wasn't a whole ton of resistance from Santos on that side because it was so quick. It was so deep, so quick, and the pressure from it being so high and cutting off on the carotid, it just blood choke put him out right away. His hand was still basically just flat on the mat as if he is bracing and trying to defend. Kudos to our referee for being able to recognize in that moment that he's out in the process, and then they were able to bring him back. But, as you mentioned, everybody who comes out of Catalyst and competes, they're a very game opponent, whether it be in the striking disciplines, MMA, or in the grappling specific world. So I do want to highlight that Professor Paul Amos, everybody that they throw in the mix, they're gamers. And I knew that this was a big test for Seth. The kid is 19 years young. He has such young and boyish features to him that he's very misleading in terms of how he's able to grapple, and he wrestles like a grown-ass man. But he just looks so young, and I think that the future is so bright for Seth. And when we take a look at who Seth Tumbleson is he's kind of that, he's like the iceberg effect, right? Because what we're seeing of him right now at 19 is we're seeing a kid who's barely grown a few whiskers on his upper lip. Like he's still got years to develop and grow into his body and mature as a man, if you will, to get that man muscle. So whereas we see some kids in their teenage years, they kind of peak, and that's where they're as big and grown and developed as they're going to be. Someone like Seth Tumbleson, he's going to have that full peak and actualization of his physical development a little bit later on. And to me, that's encouraging to be able to just look and see, wow, that kid has a bright future.
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned too, unassuming, I was going to say I thought both competitors, they are just very unassuming, in their appearance, in their game. I've gotten a chance to roll with Cameron a few times, and he's just very tricky. The way he rolls, he's very long and lanky, a pretty experienced blue belt. So I was expecting for the match to be, a little bit longer than it was. Wasn't necessarily expecting the outcome that happened. Nothing against Seth. I thought Seth would have done well either way. But yeah, same thing with Seth, just very unassuming. Even that guillotine cage side, I was watching it, and I thought that Cameron wasn't doing much to defend because the choke wasn't really in, and he was kind of just holding it, and Cameron was kind of waiting it out. And then next thing you know, Paul is separating the two, and Cameron's out cold. And yeah, very unassuming, but like you mentioned too, I'm excited to see what else is next for Seth. I think he's in a great camp right now, training under Scotty Miller. I think they're doing great things with him, so it's awesome to see such a young kid being able to take advantage of the momentum he's getting. Loss, win, loss, whatever the case is, he's doing great, man.
Oh, absolutely. And then if we were to talk about this, we agree on sub of the day, so that's something to throw out there. But we may have a different opinion of this next one. Who do you have for your match of the day?
I think you and I have the same opinion, Jordan. I think it's just, we're always having a battle with Coach Steve over there, who's just a pain in the butt. But
yeah, hey, but
as far as I'm concerned,
the boss who matters, right? We're just the talking heads over here, tap
ladies and gentlemen.
monkeys.
So I have to give him credit where it's due. I think personally, for performance of the afternoon or match of the afternoon, I'd have to go with Michael Ortiz and Jesse Fabiano.
Absolutely.
To me, for one, both these kids are only 14 years old. They went at it like a couple experienced, high-level, blue belts. It was action from very beginning to the very end of it. I think at one point Ortiz threw up a flying triangle, and it looked clean. Had Fabiano in some trouble for a minute. Fabiano was able to reverse position. It was just back and forth action that, you expect, or grown women in there, MMA fighters, etc. And these kids put it on. Almost crazy to say that they were on the prelim show. They look so good, So that would be my vote for sure. Match ends in a finish too, so it's like you can't complain about that. Even if it didn't went to decision, it was an awesome match overall.
Certainly, and I think that you mentioned a lot of the high points of that match. That there were sequences where both guys had each other in trouble. They were both relentless with their attacks, and their pursuit towards the finish was something that went all the way until it was finally secured in the process. And it's not just that they were scrapping and taking risks and going for things. It was with the technical efficiency or with the prowess that they were showing in the process. That is something that I feel like, for being teenagers, wow, like that absolutely stood out for me. But regardless of their age, the diversity of attacks, as well as the aggressive nature and the relentless pursuit in the process, we had a ton of great matches throughout the entire card at CJJC 26. A lot of great matches that are worthy honorable mentions, but I just feel like if we're talking standout moments, those wow factors, these guys are what sold it for me personally.
I would argue too,
these guys,
you wouldn't even, obviously by appearance is one thing, but if you were just looking at straight jiu-jitsu and what was happening in that match, you'd forget that they were 14-year-olds for a minute, because they looked very, very experienced, very technical. Both of them wanted it. There was a little bit controversy in, some of the match that had happened where there might have been a tap, might not have been. I will say we looked at the tape and didn't see that, but if that really was the case, I would love to run this back as a rematch or just set up both matches for both of these guys. They were both really, really exciting, and I can't stress that enough for a couple of 14-year-olds, man. It was awesome. Honorable mentions, though, I would say, for me, I was excited from the get-go to see Trevor Thompson and Garrett Munson. They both just kind of stylistically have the same energy. They're both just like head first, running into a wall. So I was excited to see that match. Wasn't necessarily sure how it would go. Garrett did come out on top on that one, but respect to both of them for putting on a really exciting match. High-paced, high energy match for sure. And then, did you have an honorable mention as well?
Just an honorable mention for being a great company man, but B, getting his hand raised in a bounce back effort after having a couple of efforts in the CJJC cage that didn't go his way. I want to give a shout out to Owen Body Bar. Owen is a kid he's tremendous to work with here from the company side. He's always a supporter of the combat sports scene in general out there. He's a gamer opponent who, despite maybe not being the most gifted, and I don't mean to say this, in a disrespectful fashion, but athletically, he's not the biggest, fastest, or strongest for the weight division. But where he lacks in some of those raw physical attributes, I believe he bridges that gap with his intellect as a grappler, with his creativity, with the attacks in the moments that you think, oh wow, like he's looping his foot through here and grabbing that over there, and there's something really funky going on, and joints are bending all over the place that you're just not really used to seeing sometimes. And he tried throwing up a buggy choke against Seth Tumbleson when they went up against each other at Grapple Games. Seth was able to work through that and eventually got the win in that match. But again, like I say, this kid's creativity from the bottom. He's a 10th Planet product through and through. I mean, you could see the essence of the 10th Planet system within his game, but just his willingness to continue to go step out there and be the man in the arena to take on test after test in whatever the format is, I feel like he deserved a shout out there.
I agree.
Getting his hand raised again, I mean, it's from a competitor's standpoint, no matter who you are, after you take a couple of losses, it's kind of tough. It messes with you mentally. It plays with your psyche, and you start kind of questioning some things. But to say, you know what, shoot or shoot, I'm going to continue to keep on going out there, shooting my shot, and eventually I'm going to find the target again, and I'll be back on track. That is what this last weekend was for Owen, in my opinion.
And I absolutely couldn't couldn't agree more. I know Owen has just been extremely active since we first had him on his last CJJC show. And then he was also on Grappling Games, both Grappling Games with us. He also did a couple other tournaments, win, lose, draw, whatever the case is. I admire Owen's attitude, his game attitude, to take the losses in stride, learn from them. He's always game, doesn't matter the weight, doesn't matter the opponent. He's just game to get in there and give it a shot. And I'm more excited that after this win, I really do think Owen kind of has a little bit of momentum going competitively. That whether it be with us, wherever the case is, I'm really, really excited to see what's next for him.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, Lewis, for us here at the CJJC, what is next?
Next, we have CJJC 27. That's going to be going down September 27th, go figure, at the Tattoo Convention. You know, if you don't know about this show, this is one of our biggest shows of the year. One of my favorite shows, the Tattoo Convention. It's such an awesome experience to be able to do. I've gotten to compete on it before. Also got a tattoo from it to commemorate that experience. It's an awesome, awesome time. So I'm really looking forward to that. Looking forward to matchmaking on that. So like I said, make sure that you go to jujitsuclub.co, get your applications in, or holler at me personally. I promise you it'll probably get done a lot quicker. If you get at me, we'll make sure we get you a match. Super excited for that.
Love to hear that right there. So folks, make sure that you get those applications in if you are interested in competing on the card, and we'll also be giving you out plenty of information on where to purchase tickets, all those things for the for that weekend for the Tattoo Convention and with CJJC 27. That all being said, want to recap real quick one time and give a special thank you and shout out to our sponsors from CJJC 26 Sweet Summer Grappling. That was DCO MMA, Valor Minds, Zombie Sport, X Vapes, After the Final Bell podcast, comments from the Peanut Gallery, and the MMA plug on Mile High Sports. Lewis, where can people follow you?
LuJitsu10P on Instagram. LuJitsu10P. Hit me up. I'll get you set up at the match, or just hit me up to be my friend. That works too.
I'm Jordan Kurtz. You can give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. Folks, thank you all so much for joining us here along for this CJJC 26 Sweet Summer Grappling Games post-show presented to you by Valor Minds.
Every dawn, every drop of sweat, every moment you push past the pain, it's your mind that carries you. Valor Minds ignite that spark within. Sharpen your focus to a razor's edge. Supercharge your stamina to outlast the toughest trails. Elevate your spirit to soar beyond limits. Crafted with nature's finest, backed by science, our formula fuels the fire of your relentless drive. You're not just running, you're rewriting what's possible. Rise above doubt, grind through fear, conquer your dreams. Run stronger, think clearer, live bolder. Valor Minds.